The prisoner of light navigator Darius Kale squinted at the anomaly on his scanner. The research vessel Horizon had ventured beyond the Cygnus arm, farther than any human expedition had journeyed before. His orders were clear: document, analyze, report. Never interfere. Control. I'm picking up unusual energy signatures at coordinates 27 to 4903, Darius reported, his voice steady despite the quickening of his pulse. Appears to be a derelict craft of unknown origin. Request permission to investigate. The response crackled through after a 30-second delay. Permission granted, navigator. Maintain protocol. Visual documentation only. Darius guided his shuttle toward the object, a crystalline structure resembling a teardrop. Approximately 12 meters long, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. It wasn't composed of any material in the Federation's database. As he circled it, the vessel's scanners revealed something inside, a humanoid form suspended in what appeared to be stasis. A rescue mission had never been part of his assignment, but compassion overrode protocol. The being inside was alive. Of that, his instruments were certain. Trapped, perhaps for centuries. I'm detecting signs of life, he reported, knowing his next actions would violate direct orders. Initiating retrieval. Navigator Kyle, stand down immediately. You are not authorized. Darius switched off the comm. What waited within that strange vessel called to something deeper than duty. Using the shuttle's magnetic tethers, he secured the crystalline pod and brought it into the cargo bay. Up close, the craft's surface responded to his proximity, patterns shifting like ripples in water. When his hand touched the translucent shell, a seam appeared beneath his fingertips. The pod opened with a sound like distant chimes, releasing a mist that smelled of ozone and something sweeter, like jasmine after rainfall. Inside lay a woman, or something resembling one. Her skin had a pearlescent quality, and her hair, floating weightlessly around her face, seemed composed of threads of light rather than organic matter. Her eyes opened. They contained no pupils or irises, only pools of luminescence that shifted between azure and violet. She regarded him with evident surprise. "You've freed me," she said, her voice resonating in a way that suggested she wasn't speaking aloud, but directly into his mind. "Why? You were imprisoned," Darius replied simply. "No one should be captive like that." She studied him with those strange, beautiful eyes. "My name is Lyria. Was a guardian of the stellar nursery at Caldwell 17. My kind are called the Luminari. I'm Darius Kyle, human, from Earth." Lyria rose from her crystalline bed, her movements fluid and graceful. As she stood, her form seemed to flicker between solidity and something more ethereal. "I must return to my realm," she said, her form growing increasingly translucent. "What you've done defies understanding. My people abandoned emotion millennia ago, yet your act awakens something forgotten within me." "Wait," Darius said, reaching toward her fading form. "Will I see you again?" Her smile contained both warmth and sorrow. "I will find you, Darius Kale of Earth. When I understand what this feeling is, I will return." She placed her hand against his cheek, her touch cool and tingling with energy. "You've freed more than my physical form today." In a burst of light that temporarily blinded him, Lyria vanished, leaving only a small crystal shard floating where she had stood. When Darius returned to the horizon, his superiors were waiting. His career with the Federation ended that day. The recording of his encounter was classified, his testimony dismissed as hallucination from cosmic radiation exposure. Only the crystal shard, now hanging from a cord around his neck, proved to Darius that Lyria had been real. And on nights when the stars seemed particularly bright, he would hold that shard and wonder if she remembered her promise. Echoes across the void. 5 years had transformed Darius Kale from celebrated navigator to a simple farmer on Terravale. A quiet agricultural colony on the outer rim, his modest home, overlooked fields of amber grain, far from the scrutiny of the Federation and the memories of his lost career. The crystal shard remained his constant companion, hanging from his neck, occasionally pulsing with a faint inner light that others dismissed as a trick of the sun. The first signs of change came subtly. Crops in the field nearest his home grew at twice the normal rate. The night sky above his property shimmered with aurora-like patterns unseen elsewhere on Terra Vale. Animals behaved strangely, gathering near his home at dusk, their eyes fixed on the horizon. Elara Quinn, Darius's neighbor and the colony's botanist, noticed the anomalies during her weekly visit to trade supplies. "Your soil samples show compounds I've never seen before," she said, leaning against his porch railing. "It's almost as if something's terraforming your land on a molecular level." Darius nodded, his hand unconsciously finding the crystal at his throat. "I've noticed. And you're not concerned?" Elara raised an eyebrow. "The colony council is starting to ask questions." Before he could answer, the crystal flared brightly, becoming almost too hot to touch. That night, Darius stood in his field under a sky filled with impossible constellations that only he could see. The air hummed with energy, and the crystal pulled against his neck, pointing upward like a compass finding true north. 3 days later, the light came. It descended like a slow-falling star, touching down in the center of his field shortly after midnight. Where it landed, the grain parted in perfect concentric circles, and at its heart stood Lyria. She was more substantial than he remembered, less ethereal light and more corporeal form. Her luminescent hair had darkened to silver white, her skin still pearlescent, but now with a warm undertone. Her eyes retained their starlight quality, but now held recognizable irises of deepest blue. "Darius Kyle," she said, her voice no longer resonating directly in his mind, but carried on the night air. "I have crossed 12,000 light-years to find you." He approached cautiously, scarcely believing she was real. "You remember?" "I remember everything," Lyria replied, taking a step toward him. Where her bare feet touched the soil, small flowers bloomed instantly. "In the space between stars, I have contemplated what happened when you freed me. My people long ago chose to transcend emotion, believing it a weakness. But when you showed compassion without purpose, without gain, it awakened something dormant in me." "What did it awaken?" Darius asked, now close enough to see the subtle rise and fall of her chest. She was breathing, something she hadn't needed to do before. "Longing," she answered simply. "The stars grew cold in your absence." Darius reached out, hesitant, his fingers stopping just short of touching her face. "Are you really here? Not just another dream?" Lyria closed the distance between them, pressing her cheek against his palm. Her skin was cool but undeniably solid. "I am here. But I am changed. The closer I drew to your world, the more I became bound by its physical laws. I am becoming something between my kind and yours." "Why would you risk that?" Darius asked. "Because you taught me something more valuable than immortality," she said. "You taught me that connection has worth." The ground trembled beneath them, and the night sky lit up with approaching ships, Federation vessels, their searchlights sweeping the fields. "They've tracked your arrival," Darius said, taking her hand. "The energy signature must have triggered their monitoring systems." Lyria looked at the approaching lights without fear. "Then we must leave this place. I didn't cross galaxies to lose you to them." As they ran toward Darius's transport shuttle, hidden beneath a dilapidated barn, the crystal around his neck pulsed in perfect rhythm with Lyria's footsteps, as if it had always been a beacon, waiting to guide her home. Between two worlds, dawn found them skimming the surface of the Nereid Sea, 300 kilometers from Terra Vale colony. Darius's shuttle, a relic he'd purchased with the last of his Federation severance, hugged the waters to avoid detection. Beside him, Lyria watched the sunrise with wonder, her fingers trailing through the salt spray that came through the open hatch. "Your world binds energy in such beautiful ways," she observed. "Light reflecting, water moving, air carrying sense, all these sensations at once. My realm is pure consciousness and energy. We experience everything simultaneously, but nothing so intensely." Darius glanced at her, still struggling to believe she was real. "Is it painful for you?" "Being here?" "Not painful," she said, considering. "Overwhelming, limited, but also more vivid. Like the difference between knowing all colors exist and actually seeing crimson for the first time." They found refuge in an abandoned research station built into the cliffs of the northern archipelago. Once designed to study marine life, It now served as home to a small community of scientists who had, for various reasons, severed ties with the Federation. Their leader, Dr. Soren Viel, had been one of Darius's instructors at the Academy before leaving under mysterious circumstances. The silver-haired physicist recognized Darius immediately. "Your reputation precedes you, Navigator," Soren said, using Darius's former title with a hint of irony. "The man who discovered alien life and threw away his career to free it. And now you've brought her back." "She found me," Darius corrected. "And we need sanctuary." Soren studied Lyria with undisguised fascination. "What exactly are you, my dear? Your molecular structure appears to be in constant flux." "I am becoming," Lyria answered enigmatically. "Each moment on this world I grow more solid, more present. My connection to my original form diminishes." Later that night, in the privacy of their quarters overlooking the churning sea, Lyria revealed more. As Darius treated a burn on her arm, the first injury she had ever sustained, caused by touching an overheated engine coil, she explained her transformation. "My kind exists primarily as consciousness tied to stellar energy," she said, wincing as he applied salve to her skin. "But being here, subject to your world's natural laws, it's restructuring my essence. I'm developing what you might call a soul." "You didn't have one before?" Darius asked, his fingers lingering on her wrist, where he could feel her newly formed pulse. "We had consciousness, purpose, even a form of collective wisdom," she explained. "But not individual attachment, not personal desire." Her eyes met his. Not love, the word hung between them, new and fragile. Darius leaned forward, and their lips met in a tentative kiss. Where they touched, a faint glow emanated from Lyria's skin, illuminating them both in soft blue light. Their moment of connection was interrupted by alarms. Federation ships had been spotted approaching the archipelago. Someone had betrayed their location. Dr. Viel burst into their quarters. "They're coming with a full scientific division. Someone transmitted data about her energy signature." His eyes fell on a small device on Darius's desk, a signal tracker from his shuttle, now blinking with an active transmission light. "You did this," Darius realized, anger rising. "You alerted them." "They're offering full pardons and unlimited research funding," Soren replied unapologetically. "She represents the greatest scientific discovery in human history." Lyria stood, her form briefly flickering between solid and luminous. "I am not yours to study or possess." "Perhaps not," Soren agreed. "But the choice is no longer yours. The price of mortality." They fled in the night, escaping through underwater caves that connected to the mainland. Lyria's diminishing connection to her stellar nature still provided advantages. She could generate enough light from her hands to guide them through the darkness and sense electromagnetic fields to avoid Federation patrols. For 3 weeks, they traveled inland, eventually finding sanctuary with a nomadic community of traders who asked no questions and valued privacy above all else. Their leader, a woman named Mara with intricate tattoos mapping celestial coordinates across her skin, recognized something in Lyria immediately. "You carry the void within you," Mara said when they first met. "I've seen your kind before, though never one walking on 2 legs among us. You've encountered the Luminari?" Lyria asked, surprised. "We call them wayfarers," Mara replied. "They guide our ships through the deep black when instruments fail. They never take physical form, though." "What happened to you?" In the safety of the nomadic camp, hidden in a canyon that disrupted scanning technology, Lyria finally explained everything to Darius. They sat beneath stars that seemed to watch them with particular intensity, her head resting on his shoulder. "My transformation is nearly complete," she said softly. "The connection to my original consciousness grows fainter each day. Soon, I will be fully corporal, fully human, or something very close to it." "Can it be reversed?" Darius asked, his voice tight with conflict. He desired her presence, yet feared being the cause of her diminishment. "Only if I return to the stellar nursery where I was born," she answered. "But even then I would not be as I was. I would remember this. You. That alone would make me different from my kind." She took his hand, placing it against her chest where her heartbeat, something she'd never possessed before, pulsed steadily. "They're coming for me, Darius, my people. They've sensed my transformation and consider it a desecration. How do you know?" "I can still hear them faintly, like echoes across vast distances. They believe I've been corrupted by human emotion. They fear others might follow my example." The night sky above them shimmered unnaturally, stars seeming to rearrange themselves into patterns no human astronomer would recognize. Darius understood without being told. It was a message, a warning. "When will they arrive?" 3 days, Lyria said. "And they will offer me a choice: return to the stars, purged of emotion and memory, or remain here, forever severed from my origin." Darius pulled her close. "Then we have 3 days. In those days, they lived a lifetime. They swam in high mountain lakes where Lyria delighted in the sensation of water against skin. They danced beneath meteor showers that seemed to fall in rhythm with their movements. They loved each other with increasing urgency, each touch creating bursts of luminescence that painted their skin with temporary constellations. On the 3rd night, as they lay intertwined, Lyria whispered, "If I stay, I will age. I will die eventually. Is a single lifetime enough?" Darius traced the curve of her face in the darkness. "A moment would be enough if it's all we had. A lifetime is a universe." Beyond the stars, they returned to the place where it began. Darius's abandoned fields on Terravale had transformed in their absence, the entire area now covered in flowers that had never existed on this world before, their petals emitting a subtle glow after sunset. At the center stood a perfect circle of bare earth where Lyria had first arrived. "A doorway," she explained. "They'll come through at midnight." They were not alone in waiting. Word had spread. A delegation from the Federation had arrived, led by none other than Admiral Sestra, the highest authority in the Exploration Division. With her came scientists, diplomats, and a security detail that kept a respectful distance only because Mara's nomadic clan had surrounded the field, making it clear that any aggression would be met in kind. "Navigator Kale," the Admiral greeted him, her tone carefully neutral. "After all this time, you've managed to exceed the trouble I expected you to cause." "I never asked for any of this," Darius replied. "Yet here we are," Sestra said, "on the verge of first official contact with an entirely new form of intelligence. The consequences will echo for generations." As midnight approached, the air grew thick with potential energy. The crystal around Darius's neck pulled toward the center of the field with increasing force, until finally he removed it and placed it in the exact spot where Lyria had first stood on Earth. The sky opened. There is no other way to describe what happened next. A vertical seam appeared in reality itself, revealing a space between spaces filled with pulsating light. From this aperture emerged 3 figures, vaguely humanoid but composed entirely of radiance, their features indistinct except for eyes that contained the depth of galaxies. The Luminari had arrived. They did not speak aloud, but communicated in bursts of light and energy that Lyria translated for everyone present. "They say I have violated our most sacred principle by taking physical form," she explained. "They say emotion is a contamination that must be cleansed." The tallest of the light beings approached Lyria, extending what might have been a hand. Light flowed between them in what appeared to be a private exchange. When it ended, Lyria turned to Darius with tears, another new experience for her, sliding down her cheeks. "They've shown me what awaits if I return. Millennia of existence, watching the birth and death of stars, preserving the balance of cosmic energies. Purpose without end, and if you stay," Darius asked quietly, "a single lifetime, joy, pain, growth, eventually death. Everything that makes humanity what it is." The Luminari communicated again, more intensely this time. "There is a third choice," Lyria said, surprise evident in her voice. "They offer terms. I may remain as I am, a bridge between our kinds. In exchange, they wish to understand what I've become. They propose an exchange of knowledge, a diplomatic relationship between humanity and the Luminari." Admiral Sestra stepped forward. "The Federation would welcome such an arrangement." The lead Luminari extended its light form toward the crystal shard lying on the ground. It rose into the air, transforming into a pulsating sphere of energy that expanded to create a permanent portal, smaller than the original rift but stable, a doorway between worlds. They've never encountered a species capable of inspiring one of their own to choose mortality, Lyria translated. They wish to understand why. Darius took her hand. And your decision? Lyria looked from the shimmering beings of pure energy to the man beside her, then to the gathered humans watching in awe. I choose both, she said firmly. I will remain as I am, walking between worlds. Ambassador to the stars and student of humanity, she squeezed Darius's hand. And I choose you, for as long as this form allows. The Luminari pulsed their acceptance of her terms. The Federation representatives began discussing protocols and treaties. Mara's nomads celebrated with impromptu music and dance. As dawn broke over the field of glowing flowers, Darius and Lyria stood at the edge of the portal, looking into the space between stars. Was it worth it? He asked. Trading eternity for this? Lyria turned to him, her eyes still containing hints of their original starlight but now focused entirely on him. Eternity without feeling is just endless time, she said. You freed more than my physical form when you opened that pod, Darius Kale. You showed me that connection, love, gives meaning to existence. One lifetime of that is worth more than endless millennia without it. She kissed him as the rising sun painted the world in gold and crimson, colors she was still learning to name. The portal to the stars hummed beside them, a reminder of the bridge they had built between two forms of existence. Together they would learn what it means to be simultaneously mortal and eternal, bound by love that had crossed galaxies to find its home.